Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today at this hour, at this moment, at this second to bear witness to the closing of another notable franchise. It was one of the more notable boutique chains of bakeries that started a renaissance of cupcake making and cupcake partaking. The company is none other than Sprinkles. If you haven't heard, if you've been under a rock since the dawn of 2026, then allow me to bring to your attention a few things. So I'm going to read an article right quick. This was published in USA Today. So it says, Sprinkles closing all its stores. Founder says December 31st is final day. Which is funny because the founder is no longer operating the company, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the gist of it is Sprinkles, the California-based cupcake chain, is permanently closing all of its stores, according to business founder and former owner. Candace Nelson announced the chain's store closures in a social media post on Wednesday, December 31st, which reads, "Today is Sprinkles' final day. I'm deeply grateful to the fans, customers, and community who showed up, celebrated with us, and made Sprinkles part of their traditions, and to the team who made it all happen. I'll always be proud of what we built." Nelson's caption for the post says, "Today, my heart is with Sprinkles employees." Is it? Nelson said she started Sprinkles in 2005 with only a KitchenAid mixer and a bag idea. Since then, the company has expanded across the United States, including in Arizona, Florida, Nevada, Texas, Utah, and Washington, D.C. As Sprinkles expanded, it launched the Cupcake ATM, a 24/7 vending machine that allows customers to purchase cupcakes and sometimes cookies outside of business hours. Sprinkles store closures come after Nelson sold the business in 2012. See, according to her social media posts, Carp Riley LLC, a private equity firm, announced in January 2013 that it invested in Sprinkles. "It's surreal to see this chapter come to a close, and it's not how I imagined the story would unfold," Nelson wrote in her post. Why would Sprinkles be closing? Nelson did not offer insight into why Sprinkles may be closing its stores. As she said, she has no ownership or operational involvement in the company. But yet you say it's not how you imagined the story would unfold. You relinquished the pen, the paper, and a draft to that story to somebody else a long time ago. So goes on to say Sprinkles does not have a publicly disclosed So it goes on to say Sprinkles does not have to publicly disclose its financial status, including revenue, since it is a private company. According to Sprinkles' website, the chain has 21 in-store locations and 25 cupcake ATMs. USA Today contacted Sprinkles and Carp Riley on Wednesday, December 31st, but has not received a response. Sprinkles customers share stories ahead of possible closings. In Nelson's post, she asked customers to share stories about how Sprinkles cupcakes added a little extra sweetness, comfort, or connection to their life. And of course, you had a lot of people going back down memory lane about Sprinkles and whatnot. I'll say this. I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. Her words mean very little for somebody that, once again, relinquished complete control, ownership, culpability, responsibility, and everything back in 2012. Her words mean very little. And of course, she would put out a statement, because, hey, it's proper decorum in the business world. You founded a company, the company goes by the wayside. They say, oh, can we get a statement? Can we get a statement? You need to, for public appearances, put out a statement, right? But her words mean very little, especially to those that have been laid off, to those that once saw her as inspiration to one day do something similar. Her words mean very little, and it's almost a bit disingenuous. Because do you really mean that? Do you really mean that your heart is with the Sprinkles employees? Because, when you look at her Instagram post, she has the little heartbreaking emoji. Is your heart really with them? Because if it was really with them, what you would be saying is, hey, I put together a little community, an online community, a group for those that are affected, for those that have been laid off, to come together so we can gather resources if you need them. If you are in search of another job opportunity, we can come together, band together in this little group, in this little community, so I can help you guys in any sort of way, shape, or form. If your heart was really with them, then you would be doing something similar to that. But instead, the only thing you do is release a statement. And you go on about your day. Because you've already collected your millions. You already collected your multi-millions way, 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 way back in 2012. You've been cut the cord on that child way back in 2012. As a matter of fact, let's go back down memory lane a little bit. Because, for some people, of course, it was a private company. And I think some people may be wondering, how much did she sell it for? So, while the numbers aren't exactly published, we can take an educated guess based off of another chain, actually, that went out of business long before this one did. So that business, anybody remember Crumbs? Crumbs, anybody? Anybody remember? So they were one of the first to start it. Actually, I think, if you want me to be all the way honest, I think she actually bit off Crumbs, but she added in a little bit of innovation to it. So it lasted a little longer, but nonetheless, Crumbs came first before Sprinkles. So at the time that she sold it, around 2012, it had 10 to 11 locations. It operated a traveling food truck across the nation. She was selling cake mixes in over 250 Williams-Sonoma stores. Who was going to Williams-Sonoma just to buy cupcake mix? She debuted the world's first cupcake ATM. And it opened back in 2005 in Beverly Hills. So Sprinkles was one of those ones. It started that high-end niche boutique cupcake. that high-end boutique niche cupcake phenomenon that then translated over to others, to other people who were inspired, like Georgetown Cupcakes and what other ones? It's a few others, but she's the one that really started that trend of putting it into the more gentrified, high-end parts of town, right? So let's go back to Crumbs. Around 2012, Crumbs had over 50 locations. Its business model was still based off of the traditional bakery foot traffic type of setup, right? So it relied heavily on foot traffic. It wasn't no ATMs or nothing like that. I'm not even sure if they had cake mixes that they were selling. But back in 2011, it was acquired for $66 million. And this is a chain that opened up in 2003. So in about 10 years since it opened, it was valued at around $66 million. Now, at around the same time, Sprinkles did not have that many stores, 10 to 11 locations, but it had the food truck, it was selling cake mixes, and it was debuting ATM, so it had that innovation factor, right? And this was more of the posh, high-end boutique cupcake niche type of brand, right? So if Crumbs was estimated at 66 million, then I think it would be safe to say that Sprinkles, with what it was and what it was about to give in the future, I think it's safe to say that Candace Nelson probably sold that company between I want to say around 25 to about 45 million, if not a little bit more, but less than 66 million, because again, it didn't have that many stores. I think it's safe to say that this woman walked away with what? An 8-figure sum of money after it was required. So you've already made your multi-millions. You already cut the cord. You let it go and never look back. Even though in some way you continue to kind of be the face, but as far as the day-to-day responsibilities and all of that, you gave that up to somebody else. And now you want to sit up here and have people believe that your heart goes out to them. You want them to believe that, oh, it was a we effort. You stop belonging to the program way back before today, before December 31st. So there is no we when it comes down to the people that have just now been laid off. There is no we. I just think it is just a little disingenuous to hear these types of words come from people who, as quickly as they started something, is as quick as they wanted to let go of it. And of course, she gave some reasons of why she let go of it, which actually, I'm gonna let y'all hear why she let go of it. Y'all look at this video.
I founded Sprinkles in 2005 based on a passion. I built it into a nationwide brand, invented the cupcake ATM, had an international franchise, and then in 2012, I decided to sell it. Why? Let's dive in. The reasons I decided to sell my company were both personal and business. Let's start with business. I consider myself a creator, a founder. I like creating a concept and taking it from 0 to 1. So creating something out of nothing. The most creative part of starting your company is in the very beginning. It's when you're developing the product, you're creating the brand, you're coming up with that go-to-market. Everything's really exciting and novel and fun. At least for me, that's my skill set. I probably don't need to explain to you that once you get to 10 retail locations across the country, that becomes a huge operational challenge. I had enough self-awareness at the time to realize that operating a national retail business was not my strong suit. Not that I couldn't do it, but I knew there must be other people out there who had the experience, the pattern recognition, and the expertise to be able to take my company from 10 to 50 or 10 to 100. And I didn't feel like I was that person. Also, even though Sprinkles was a category creator, there was so much competition springing up. And I really kind of felt like, we needed some strategic muscle to be able to play in such a crowded marketplace. On the personal front, when I started Sprinkles, I was basically a newlywed. No kids, in a rental, and really had nothing else to devote my time to. But in the 8 years that I'd spent building Sprinkles, I had 2 kids, 2 boys who, when they were little, I would just pack them up and take them around the country to store openings and this and that. But as they grew up and had school and commitments and friends, I felt badly not giving them some roots of some sort. I wanted them to have routine, stability. These are things I didn't have growing up because I grew up moving around the world every few years. So giving that to my kids was really important to me. I really felt like that was the right decision for me to make at the time, but it's not to say that I didn't grapple with that decision and sort of disentangling my identity from the business for years after that. And I'll be sure to tackle that in another video.
So you hear her reasons for that, right? And of course, it's understandable. It's reasonable. She wanted to be a mom and whatnot. And, she didn't think she could handle it and all this other stuff, right? I understand giving up a good bit of the operational task type of delegating to a more robust system. I understand that. However, you did not dare to retain any type of stake in the company. These words would be a little more believable if you retain 40%, 30%, some amount of modicum of share in this company to where, yes, the closing of it actually does kind of affect you. Maybe not to the scale of the average day-to-day worker that was clocking in and out, but it still affected your overall portfolio. It would be more believable if that was the case, because then people would say, oh, well, it looks like you will feel some type of sting from this happening. But sweetie, you not feeling nothing, because again, you disconnected. You gave up this child a long time ago in 2012. You gave it up. You retained no parts, no type of interest of it or nothing. You don't feel for these people. This is no more than optics. Just for people can say, oh, well, at least she cares. Well, at least she has a heart. If she had a heart, if she really cared, she would have retained a certain amount, a certain percentage of ownership in this company. And this is the type of stuff where you cannot fall for it. You cannot fall for the words of capitalistic interests. People who put capitalistic interests above something that's supposed to have meaning. Because that's what these companies do out here. They make you go through all these hoops and jump through all these circles. Take you around about. And they use language like we and family and community and all this other stuff. Only to then, at the end of the day, when everything doesn't go as planned, when the dollar stops profiting, when they can't squeeze any more out of it, when it slows down, when it stops being competitive enough, all of a sudden they say, oh, it is with a heavy heart, as they would say. We regret to inform you, as they would say. And then the news comes where you no longer have a position and you no longer have a job. You no longer have benefits. You no longer have nothing contributing to any type of social security fund that you may try to draw upon years and years and years from now. You no longer have anything funding any type of 401k. But yet they want you to believe that they care. They want you to believe that, you know, they were your family. We were a community. The community does not SHIT on people like this. If you were a community, where are the resources, huh? And I know some of y'all may say, oh, well, maybe she might not have all that money. Maybe, you know, since she sold it a long time ago, maybe she might not have as much money as she had then to do something. I'm not going to allow anyone to go down that frame of mind, that way of thinking, because let me tell you something. Once she sold that company, she solidified generational wealth for her and her family. She solidified it after that one sale. And then what did she go on to do? Because guess what? She's been busy ever since. If you don't believe me, let's take a look. So here are 3 companies she has founded since she sold off Sprinkles in 2012. And you could go on her LinkedIn and you can check this out. She's the founder of Play to Progress, early childhood sensory-based play. She's the founder of another food concept, Pizzana, which is a Michelin-Bill gourmet award-winning neo-Neapolitan pizzeria, the leader in third-wave pizza concepts, whatever the heck that means. And then look up at the top. I want you to look up at the top, right there. At the very top, she's the founder of CN2 Ventures. So she's now a venture capitalist. She's up there in the leagues of entities like BlackRock. She's up there with the people like those that are on Shark Tank. She's up there. She is now the person that is now going out there and about and acquiring a stake of other companies. She's doing the same thing that Carp Riley did with her company. And yet she wants you to believe that she cares. She does not care. At least not to the extent that you might think she does. Because again, if she cared, she would have retained a stake. If this was her pride and joy, her baby, she would have retained a stake. Let me go to something else, because some people might feel like, oh, well, I think you're being a little too hard on her. I think you might be going a little bit too hard on someone who genuinely started something because she was, laid off. Now, mind you, we're talking about somebody that comes from an investment banking background, her and her husband. So this is one of the things that she said a little, not too long ago, but so she was in an interview, and this person asked, the interviewer asked, but your path to entrepreneurship was certainly not a straight one, right? I mean, you do not come from generations of business owners. I think you have such an incredible story of growing up in Indonesia and then your subsequent journey. So please start there and share a little bit about the beginning. Now, that's the interviewer trying to kind of hype her up to tell her unique, her incredible story, which isn't too incredible. But she goes on to say, I think sometimes, now this is Candace Nelson, founder of Sprinkles, responding. She says, I think sometimes we look at entrepreneurs and we think that they have something that the rest of us don't. But I'm here to dispel that myth because there was absolutely nothing entrepreneurial about my upbringing. My dad was a corporate lawyer and very risk averse. He worked for 2 American companies over his career lifespan. He was a very loyal employee to the point where anytime they asked him to move, he did. He brought his family of 4 with him. It sounds like that loyalty did not rub off on you the same way, because you stopped being loyal to Sprinkles back in 2012. But the crux of this that I want to get to is she says there was absolutely nothing entrepreneurial about my upbringing. She says that it's a myth that many entrepreneurs have something that the rest of us don't. Well, you did have something that a lot of people didn't have. You had the background of being an investment banker, which means that you had the capital, both you and your husband. Because the average salary for an investment banker, maybe an associate, a 4 to 5 year associate back then might have been what? Total compensation, $100K, $150K, around that time. Back in the early 2000s. That was around the time she got laid off. So you had capital. Not only that, your father was a corporate lawyer. So even he was making 6 figures, a healthy low 6-figure salary, if not high. He was in big law. Not only that, but your father-in-law is also an ex-banking CEO. So which meant that your husband, even if your husband did not have the same high-end job as you, he definitely had access to some capital. Not only that, But there's also the networking aspect that both your father and your husband's father has. So y'all had connections in finance, something that many entrepreneurs do not have. So you did have something that most entrepreneurs don't have. You contradicted yourself. And it is these minor contradictions that we must suss out when we start talking about these quote unquote capitalistic people who like to try to position themselves as if they are for the people. You're not for the people. If you were, you would have stayed loyal to Sprinkles. Somebody would have had to use the jaws of life to pry your hands completely off of Sprinkles. But all it took was what? An 8-figure lump sum of money for you to turn away and not look back and to go off into greener, wealthier pastures. Did you take anybody along with you that helped you with the initial setup? I would like to know that. From you starting that store in Beverly Hills, and that's another thing too. That's another thing that you did, that you had, that nobody else had. You had access to a very high-end location to start a business. Not too many people can afford to start a storefront business in one of the richest, wealthiest neighborhoods in California, let alone the nation. You had access to that. So it's contradiction after contradiction with many of these people. And for those of you who want to start a business, who have aspirations of starting something, while there's nothing wrong with that idea, however, you need to understand how to go about it so that you don't end up crapping over others just to capitalize off of something. When people are giving you loyalty, when you ask for loyalty, when these CEOs, when these company or owners ask for loyalty, they expect it from people. But where's your loyalty to the people, huh? Why don't more CEOs use their resources to build community so that when these things do happen, your ex-employees have something to fall back on to help them? You don't just let them go as if they are a child that just turned 18, then you throw them out to the wolves. You say, hey, you go on ahead. Did she bring the people up that started along with her? Did she even bring those people up with her? Are they still around helping her with these other ventures? The Pizzana, whatever the heck it is. The pizzeria chain. The venture capital route that she's going down now. Did she even bring those people that helped her with that initial startup in Beverly Hills? Are any of those people still around? I bet you they're not. Because like J-Lo, they don't want you to be fooled by the rocks that they got. And they want you to believe that they just steal Jenny from the block. But they're not. They are more loyal to their pockets than they are to you. And you have to be careful with those people. The minute this woman allowed another entity to come in and to buy her completely out of that should have been a warning for everybody else. That should have been a warning for everybody else to be like, oh, you know what? This might not mean as much to her as we thought. Maybe we need to plan our exit. Because as of today, as of the time of this recording, Sprinkles is no more. Somebody's job is no more. And yet, instead of building some type of community, some type of thing where people who were once employees can now come, gather, maybe share some type of resources, share some type of advice on where to go, where to look for another job or what have you. There is nothing. There is nothing there. And it's high time that we make these entrepreneurs, these founders, the CEO more socially responsible, especially when small businesses, because I'm pretty sure Sprinkles would be categorized as a small business. Each franchise would be a small business. As small businesses are the backbone of this country, they owe it to the citizens that they employ to be a whole lot more socially responsible than they are. And it is high time that we demand that. As a matter of fact, there should be a law, a clause that says when you create a company, when you create something that employs other people, or let's say, hey, once your company reaches a certain threshold and you have this many employees, it is your responsibility to create a social structure that will be able to help your employees or ex-employees if they fall on hard times. Point blank, period. And I know some people might say, oh, they got a 401k. You got to pay taxes on that. If you withdraw it, you got to pay taxes and penalties. That's a double-edged sword right there. Because they should not be penalized for their job going out of business. It needs to be something separate. And I would love for someone to advocate for that. Because again, far too many of these CEOs and company owners, they have too much power for them to completely turn their backs on the people that made their companies what it is or what it was today. To then just be thrown out to the sharks, thrown out to the wolves and said, hey, you on your own. We can no longer help you. This is another episode of the Ethical Audit. If you like what you heard today, listen, hit subscribe, hit that share button, like, comment, be sure to tell a friend to tell a friend to tell another friend so we can all be right here. And remember, talk is cheap. Talk is so doggone cheap, it don't make no doggone sense. Y'all take care.